Hello, sports historians. Welcome to another episode of our Uninterrupted series. In fact, it's the final one. This one, Wayno Uninterrupted. That's right, Wayne Boehle, the LMU athlete from the 60s who went on to be the lead attorney for LMU in the Hank Gathers case. He sits down, and he may not have dropped his E-Space shot, but he did drop some knowledge. 120 minutes straight from Wayno. It's Wayno Uninterrupted. It was recorded March 2nd. 2020.
Am I going to shoot it again?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Now the all-conference selection. From Loyola. It's the big shot, Wayne. No pressure.
No pressure. Uh-oh.
Marley's on it. Bam. That's it, baby. That's it. Cool, Wayne. As you can see, this is the seat of honor right here. Well, thanks for coming.
Sure.
This is great. Hopefully we can do a little bit of background on you and find out a little bit about your athletic career, and then talk a little bit about. We were over at the statue unveiling the other day, so it'd be great to get some of your insight on that.
All right.
Marley's producing today.
Hi.
Way to go, Mar. So, Wayne, I think I read where you were born in New York, state of?
Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. So what there for?
I was there till 1948, so I was there 5 years. And then I remember, I'll never forget, my mom said we're leaving. My dad had left early and come out here to find a home and a business to support the family. And we went to the airport, and I didn't want to get on the plane. My mother told me not to worry. This plane is not going up in the air. It's going to go on the ground all the way. So that's the first lie, the only lie my mother ever told me.
Nice. Your long love affair with sports started in the park leagues in Culver City?
Yeah, when I was probably eight years old, 8 or 9 years old, I got on my bike and I rode to Vets Park from where I lived in Culver City, and saw this team practicing, and they were older than I was. They were probably 12 or 13, and I talked to the park director and told him I wanted to play. He said, well, you're awfully little and you're young. You come back. I said, I really want to play now. I'm a good athlete. And he ended up endearing me to the team, and they let me play, and I played short center field.
Okay. For
the team that won the Culver City Midget Championships back. This is 1951, maybe.
Oh wow! How
52,
did you? You're that
52.
young. You had the gumption to walk right up to the guy and say, "Hey."
I was playing baseball, Denny, from the time I was 4 years old. My dad was an ex-baseball player, and
okay.
And when I wasn't playing with him, I was playing in the front yard, throwing balls against the steps, trying to catch them, throwing balls up in the air, pretending that I was Carl Furillo catching a fly ball in right field. So it was sports primarily has been 98% of my life outside of my family and work.
Did you have any memories of the Brooklyn Dodgers, being a fan of that? Because you're really young, but
no. I mean, my dad, who was a Dodger all the way. In fact, he was a great pitcher. He even tried out for the Dodgers.
Really?
Yeah, my dad tried out for the Dodgers, and the story goes that he was in spring training, and he was pitching to Hack Wilson of the Chicago Cubs,
RBI record,
who hit a line drive back, and my father instinctively raised his hand up. The ball hit him in his right hand, broke an eardrum, and broke his hand in about 4 places.
Whoa!
That was the end of his major league career tryout, because he did pitch after that. He pitched for these teams that in those days they used to have, like, you call them similar to what we have as club teams today.
Like traveling.
And he would play one weekend, he'd pitch for the fire department against the police. The next weekend he'd pitch for the police against the fire department. So he told me one other story. I'm trying to remember. I believe it was Ty Cobb, but if it wasn't Ty Cobb, it was one of those all-time greats. Had a sister who was a great player, and she came to town, and there was all hoopla about her playing against the men, and my father happened to be on the mound that day, and anyway, he struck her out the first 2 times he faced her. So she came up for the 3rd time, and the manager came out to my dad, and he said, "You've got to let her hit. People are here to see her hit." And he says, "If you want her to hit, you put another pitcher in." And he said that the manager, in fact, did take him out, put somebody else in, so that the crowd could be pleased, because he wasn't about to let her hit.
He could have taken a shot from a worse guy. Hack Wilson was a legendary player. Like, I think he set the all-time RBI record.
190 RBIs in 1930. Same year, he hit 56 home runs.
Wow. No, that record still stands.
The RBI record
I think
stands.
it still stands, right?
It does. In
fact, that's crazy to hold a record that long.
There's a little bit of an asterisk because he always thought he had 191, and they took one away from him for some reason. I remember reading that story.
So you're playing in the park leagues there,
right?
Primarily baseball, or did they also have like basketball and flag football or anything like that?
At that age, it was only softball. I played
softball. Okay.
Yeah, I only played probably from age 9, 10, 11. I didn't touch a basketball until the 5th grade. Didn't even know what basketball was until the 5th grade. In fact, one of my high school teammates, who was all CIF, we went to grammar school together, and I can remember in the 5th grade, he beat 3 of us by himself. And that's when I started, and that's when I picked the sport up and continued to play.
What elementary school?
Culver Grammar School.
Culver Grammar. And then did you go straight to the middle school after that?
Culver Grammar, Culver Junior High, Culver High School.
So what's some of the things you remember about checking in at Culver High School? You must have been excited to get on some teams with good uniforms and.
Yeah, it was interesting because I'd grown. I was probably 6'2", maybe by the start of my 10th grade. In those days, high school was 10, 11, and 12.
10, 11, 12, yeah.
So the high school varsity coach had recruited myself, Tom McPherson, to play in the varsity summer league.
Oh, right.
So as a 9th grader in the summer, I'm playing varsity summer league basketball. And then the season started. I never thought I would play varsity as a sophomore, but I did. I got selected. It was Tom and myself and one other 10th grader that were selected to play varsity basketball as a 10th grader.
Wow. And how were the Centaurs? Were they Centaurs then?
Centaurs, they're always the Centaurs. And we were average to better than average, maybe 3rd or 4th place in the league my sophomore year. And my junior and senior year, we won the league.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Won the league and beat some very prominent Keith Erickson, who went to El Segundo. High school was one of my friends that I competed against in high school.
Oh, wow. Concurrent with, I think, Gail Goodrich in those days? Was he out at Sun Poly or something like that?
Goodrich was at Poly High School.
Yeah. So he was a big-time player out there, I guess.
He was but again, and this is a prejudicial comment, city basketball, in my opinion, is a lot different than CIF basketball.
Yep.
And to their detriment, they don't have the financial support that CIF schools did. So oftentimes, some of these great players like Goodrich, although he got his accolades, he was a very good high school player, obviously, and now he's a Hall of Fame NBA player.
Yeah. He could score.
Yep.
So I do my research, Wayne.
Yeah.
I'm a researcher by nature.
He doesn't do the research. Teresa does the research.
I was hoping you'd fill me in on the snowball dance, your senior year.
1961 snowball. Actually, it was 1960 because it turned 61 in January.
Okay.
So we had just played El Segundo in the Pacific Shores tournament.
Oh, yeah, Pac Shores.
And we beat them by about 18, 20 points. I scored 26 points.
Wow.
Tom, my teammate, the kid I mentioned earlier, scored 29 points. And we went through them like poop through a goose.
Got some all. You get all tournament.
And I don't remember.
Did they do that?
Because they did have an all tournament, but we lost the next game to Glendale, who had 4 Division I players on their team. They had there's 3 brothers who played. Sutherland. Okay. There's Gary Sutherland and his older brother who was a great pitcher. Also, they all went to Stanford.
Oh wow!
And played there.
Okay.
And a kid named Mitchell Tree and anyway, they were very good, and they beat us in the semifinals. So if anyone would have made all tournament, it probably would have been Tom.
Okay.
If you get to the finals, you can get 2 or 3 kids, but
in
semis you only get 1. So the answer is no. So then, to get back to the snowball, the next tournament we played in was the Beverly Hills tournament at the swim gym.
At the swim gym.
And as fate would have it, we're playing El Segundo in the quarter or semifinals of the tournament. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. It's there was a movie made called Fate is the Hunter. If you want to talk about fate, I'll explain it to you in just a second.
All right.
So the day before our game, or 2 days before our game was on Friday, I get a call from one of my dear high school friends. His name was John Hampton. And John Hampton was going steady with a girl that I had gone to school with from kindergarten to the 12th grade. Okay. She was one of my best friends. Her maiden name was Sheila Benson. He calls me up and he says, "Wayne, I need you to do me a favor." And I said, "What?" He said, "I need you to take Sheila to the snowball because I have to work." Mm-hmm. And I said, "John, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to the dance." And he goes, "You have to do it, please. She really wants to go." So I called her up to see if I could dissuade her. And she said, "Wayne, I really would like to go. John is such a jerk for doing this. He doesn't need the money. I don't know why he has to work." So I said, "All right, I'll take you." So fast forward now to the game. The game is the day of the dance.
At the swim gym. At
the swim gym. We play El Segundo. Our coach made one of the few mistakes he's ever made in his coaching life, and I loved my high school coach. He was like a surrogate older brother or father to me.
Dale Goodyear.
Dale Goodyear.
Right? Is that him?
Yes, that's him with the towel. That's him.
Yeah.
That's him, and those are 3 of my teammates. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
3 of my teammates.
That's great. Okay.
So he leaves me in the game, and I foul out in the first half.
Whoa. Wow.
And the 2 of the calls were
Did he lose track, or did he just trust that you wouldn't get another call?
No, he thought I was. He knew that to beat them, we had to play well, and this was a revenge factor for us beating them in the Shores tournament. So the game's over. We lose the game, and I'm in the shower, and Keith comes in. Keith Erickson comes in from the other side and starts laughing. Says, "Hey, nice game, Wayne." He says, "Fouled out in the first half." He said, What the heck was wrong with you? And I said, I've got to go to this dumb school dance. And he started laughing again. He said, "Have a great time." So I ended up going to, it's interesting because the girl who had the pre-party to the high school dance was...
High school hasn't changed much.
No, at the pre-party was one of these girls that starred in, she was incredibly beautiful. And she was in all those beach blanket bingo movies. Her name,
Frankie Avalon, and
her name is her acting name was Patty Chandler, and her real name was Patty Lauterbach.
Okay.
And she was our homecoming queen, and who I took, by the way, to the.
Oh, look at you! You're like Kobe dating a starlet to your prom.
I took her to our not our homecoming dance. It was, what do they call it? What do they call the dance at the end of the year? It's
the prom?
Prom.
I took her to the prom.
I took her to the prom. Anyway.
It would have been impressive if she's Sadie Hawkins.
So I was 6, at that time I'm 6'4", 170 pounds, and I had a glass of champagne at her house and 1 beer. And we go to the dance, and as fate would have it, we were sitting at a table, and the table had 2 alumnus from the previous year.
Okay.
Great athletes from Culver High who the girls had asked to take them to the dance.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, there's 6 of us, and one of those One of them was John Phillips, who was all CIF football player, lineman, who became a judge up in Monterey County, Salinas, and Pat Brosnan, who went to Cal State Long Beach and broke every record there was receiving. First he went to Santa Monica College. He ended up playing Canadian pro football, and sadly he passed away at the age of 20 or 21 of prostate cancer.
Jeez.
So they're sitting at this table with me, and they're egging me on. We had a tray of cookies in the center of the table, and they're saying, you can't hit the principal. Okay. And he was probably 30, 40 feet away, and they kept egging me on. So funny, I picked a cookie up, and I threw it, and I hit him right in the chest.
Oh, my gosh.
And he gets up, sees me standing up, like there's the man who perpetrated this assault, and comes over. And he could sense that I had been drinking, whether it was my breath or what it was, pulled me out of the dance. And now here's by today's standards, what happened to me was one of the most egregious actions ever taken. He was a brand new principal.
Okay.
So he was trying to make
an example
of me, and he asked me that he would go easier on my punishment if I would tell him who had the party and where the party was.
Oh, goodness.
I wouldn't do that. So here's what he did to me. He suspended me from school.
This is a turn. You're on the stand here.
He suspended me from school for 2 weeks, told my teachers I had to get an F for every day I was out, and that the highest grade I could attain was a C. He threw me off the basketball team, said you can never play basketball again this year, and I was a senior.
What the heck?
I was in the Senior Honor Society. He took my sweater away, threw me out of that.
Jeez.
I was president of the Blue Sea, which is the Letterman's Club. He threw me out of that. The only thing he didn't throw me out of was an off-campus club that I was a member of, which he couldn't do anyway. So now here I am.
Golly,
that's
highly punitive.
I thought my life was basically over. So for 2 weeks I was going to Santa Monica College, and I'd meet these guys. They would have lunch, and they'd come in and they'd laugh at me. And these are the same two guys that
told you to do it?
To throw the cookie. So I end up eventually going back to school. And while I'm in school, and I'm telling you this because I think this is so important, I can remember writing a couple of stories to kids that had fallen on bad times, explaining to them what happened to me and how I turned it around in hopes that they would turn it around. My coach comes up, pulls me out of class, and he says, I've got a list of all your classes. I just want you to follow me. And one by one, he took me into the class and talked to the teacher during class and said, listen, this young man has a chance to play college basketball at a very high level.
Wow.
But he will not be able to play if you don't give him the grade he earns. He will not be able to get into the school. So I'm asking you to disregard the principal's instructions.
My goodness.
And give him the grade that he earns. Don't give him the grade that the principal told you must give him.
Jeez.
4 out of my 5, because of PE they gave me an A. 4 out of my 5 teachers gave me the grade I earned, and one who was afraid of the principal gave me a C. So I had A's, all A's and B's, and 1 C, and I was able to get into
that
moved
your whole life forward.
I was able to get into Loyola University. But it goes even further. When I said fate is the hunter, we were talking about this. My wife and I, Tina, my wife of 54 years, had I not thrown that cookie, had I not been suspended from the basketball team, I was offered 3 scholarship offers without playing my senior year. Loyola University, Cal State Long Beach, and Pepperdine. And for some reason, I chose Loyola. I think the main reason was the head coach was my U.S. history teacher, John Arndt.
Yeah.
John Arndt, who's still a very good friend of mine. And
so he was high school teacher at Culver City, but then he was head
coaching.
basketball coach. Okay.
Well, he was the freshman coach when he taught, and then he got the head coaching job and the athletic director's job, taking over for Billy Donovan, and then he quit teaching.
But you may not have chose.
Well, I may have gotten offers. I may have been better player that other schools looked at, and I would never have met my wife. I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
So
lucky you. Look at it's all led up to this point.
I call that fate. Fate is the hunter. It turned out to be a blessing rather than something horrific.
And it's also a really important just example of how important coaches are sometimes, because they see the student outside of the classroom engaging in something else and giving the best they have in another area, and they can see that part of them. And so then it's important in that they also mentor them in a whole different way sometimes than teachers or other people in your life do.
Without a doubt. He didn't have to do what he did.
Right.
He did it.
Bold.
I mean, it was unsolicited by me. I wasn't even thinking of that. And he just came in and pulled me out of class. And
he's a legendary guy there, right? Like,
he sure is. The gym is. I spoke at the gym is named after him. It's called the Del. Right. It's called the Del.
And it's like built in the aviation era, kind of, isn't it? Almost built like a hangar.
Yeah, it's a small gym. Small gym with seating on only one side.
Yeah, right.
And they've never, for some reason, no bond issues. Nothing has ever happened to where they've leveled that or made that the girls' gym and built a bigger gym. But it's still there.
They have
same place.
They have a great program. Like, their football team is off the charts lately. Their
football team is excellent, and Goodyear's son is one of the coaches.
Oh, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a neat lineage. So you head to Loyola.
I head to Loyola.
You'd been a public school kid. Was any of the fact that that's a religious school, did that open your eyes to anything or weigh on you at all?
The only thing that bothered me was coming from a public grammar school. I signed the application. I'm a Roman Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I signed that, but if you're a Catholic, you have to go to religion class all 4 years. Every semester, you must take a religion class. Well, I've never. I mean, other than going to First Holy Communion classes and confirmation classes at St. Augustine's, which is, I did that. But these guys were all taking religion coming from all the Catholic high schools. 50% of the kids that go there are coming from Catholic high schools. So at that time, and it was all men. There were no women. And as I sit back and think about that, I wonder how could that not dissuade me from going there? But for some reason.
Did you have to do the CCD classes when you were in elementary school?
I did.
You did? I used to blame everything on the CCD kids to my teachers. Anytime I was missing an assignment or, didn't have my pencil box or something, I'd go, it's those CCD kids from the public schools, sister.
It's amazing, but the school itself, and I have grammar school, high school, college, business friends that I still associate with.
Yeah,
it's just my personality that I stay involved. In fact, the end of this month, we're going down one of our high school friends. In fact, he's in that picture. Moved to Long Beach, and we're going to go see his house. There's 4 of us. We're going to drive down and see his house.
Isn't that great?
Yep.
Tell me about now. This is when, of course, in collegiate sports, freshmen didn't play on the varsity.
Correct.
So your ninth grade year, did they have a freshman team that you played on?
I did. They did.
And so was John Arndt the coach of that, or had he already been promoted?
He had been promoted, and Art Bell, former player there, became the freshman coach. He was my coach.
And then once you get to your sophomore year. You seemed ready to go because you had some good stats there, Wayno.
I had some great stats as a freshman too. I remember I made all tournament at the Pasadena freshman tournament. I was a second leading scorer on the team. Dick McCloskey was the leading scorer, and so understanding and knowing me and knowing my mentality is important for this point. So I am now. You go from the freshman team to the varsity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm counting the guys on the varsity because they only take 10 to travel. And I'm counting and I'm saying, I want to make that traveling team. I want to make that traveling team so bad. And I was on full scholarship, as was most of everybody on that team. So I'm counting, and I get to 9 people that I know are going to be for sure on it. And then there's the 3 freshmen.
Sure.
That Dick Schindler, who turned out to be a great college player, Dick McCloskey, myself, and then there was another kid, his name was Ron Miller, who was all CIF.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you an interesting story. So now, as a freshman, this just came back to me. The first day of practice, the coach lines us all up on the baseline, and he says, I'm your coach, and I'm Art Bell, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to step out, give me your name, and tell me any basketball accolades, awards that you think are relevant for me to know.
Okay.
And I'm probably
It's a little odd.
There's probably 18 kids there trying out for the freshman team, and I'm number 17 in line. And the first kid goes up and says, "My name is Hugh Foley. I was first team All-State from Montana."
Hmm.
And I'm going, "Oh my God, All-State!" And then we're going down. Another kid stepped out and said, "I was second team All-CIF. I went to a school called Avalon High School." And I'm listening to these guys, all league, all school, and now it came to me, and I stepped forward and I said, "I played 2 years of varsity basketball at Culver City High School." That's all I said. And I said back, well, I quickly learned that the kid who made All-CIF from Avalon High School would not start on my JV team in high school.
Yeah.
That's how weak that
Putting
program.
up numbers there at Avalon playing Mary Starr.
Being All-State in Montana, my parents moved to Montana, I'm sure I would have been All-State. But
right.
Anyway, it was an eye opener to see all these guys with all these awards, and here I was. Actually, what you may not know is when I started LMU, I was on a half basketball, half baseball scholarship.
Right.
And after the first year, I asked him to please, is there some way you can? Because by the time basketball was over, and I went out to the baseball field, the season was half over.
I was going to say, yeah, they've already played games.
Yeah, they start in November practicing.
Yeah.
And by March, their season is.
It's tough to do that in college.
So he said.
And your true love was basketball?
True love was basketball at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "That's fine. We'll give you a full basketball scholarship," which I had. And then I started playing volleyball thanks to your cousin, my brother-in-law.
And because you had the spring open.
I had the spring open.
And it was like probably a club sport there at the time, or?
No, it was the volleyball. Just first collegiate volleyball teams. It started, in fact, in the '64 Nationals. Santa Monica College won it.
Yes,
And
they won 5 out of the first 6 or something because they probably had all the.
'64. They just started like 2 years earlier, so I picked the sport up very quickly, played with your cousin, my brother-in-law, who started the team.
So did a little digging, Wayne, as you know, big researcher. Notice over your career, okay, you go all conference one of your years.
Correct, my sophomore year.
And pretty solid, You always seem to be about the third leading scorer.
I think I averaged close to 10 points a game, I think.
You're right. You're right in that area, and pretty decent field goal percentage, 41% from the floor.
Wow.
But I do have to take you to task on something.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a lot of respect for you. I always have.
I know what
and
it
I
is.
really would have thought you were more like a 80-90% free throw shooter, and I'm seeing 68.1, Wayne. And I circled it and I said, I'm going to need to confront this.
At the age of 76, I think I could shoot a better percentage than that.
Did you go underhanded? You didn't even do that?
No, I did go underhanded the last game of the year.
Did you really? Just for fun?
Against USF, the last game of the year.
No, looking around too, it seemed like Loyola was pretty strong when Jerry Grote was there.
Grote.
He was a good player, looked like.
Jerry Grote was a great player, college player.
Yeah.
Drafted by the Lakers.
Right.
Didn't play much. In fact, that's how I met Jerry West.
Through him?
Through him.
And Jerry West, I don't know if I forget if I relayed this to you, but while I was at Archer, he came to speak to everybody there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and he got out, and I said hello, and he goes, "So you're one of the Lennons?" And I said, "Yeah," and he said something about Wayne, and I said, "Yeah, Wayne tells me he beats you regular in poker." And he goes, "Oh, really? He said that. I suppose he told you he beats me in golf, too." So I want to get this straight now, Wayne, on record.
He's a very good golfer.
Okay. Okay.
Very good golfer and a good friend. And, I met him. You may or may not know this, but when the Lakers, when Wes Baylor, Tommy Hawkins, Jimmy King, when the Lakers were there, they practiced at LMU.
I do remember that. Dick Gass took me to their practices when I was 8 years old, and shout out to my godfather for doing that. It cemented in me that adoration of both the Laker brand, these great guys, and I really loved basketball because I went and watched the Lakers practice at Loyola. It was awesome.
The only people allowed in the gym when the Lakers were practicing were the varsity basketball players. So I was able to get in the gym. And how I met Jerry West was practice was over, and Grody saw me, and Grody knew I was a volleyball player, and he played a little volleyball. And he said, Wayne, let's play some volleyball. So we were setting the net up, and Jerry West was down at the other end just shooting around after practice. And he stopped, put the ball in his arm, came down, and said to Jerry Grody, hey, this looks like fun. Can you teach me how to do this?
Really?
And Grody said, I can't, but he can. He pointed at me. And so that's how I met him. And we've been friends ever since.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was he, did he take to it?
He was bouncing balls into the ceiling when he timed it correctly. His ball control passing was a little suspect, but in 15 minutes, he was, I'm guessing he had close to a 38, 37
he had a crazy
vertical.
Yeah.
And when he timed it, he really enjoyed doing that.
Of course.
He liked that.
How did you pick up the sport? I mean, you told the story that was my cousin. So I hadn't mentioned that so far, that you're married to one of my dearest and leaders of my family, Tina Boehle, Tina Lennon. And so, but her older brother introduced you to the sport?
Yes. Well, I played in high school. It was a sport that we all dabbled in, and there was no high school teams in those days. We dabbled in it. We used to go to the place called The Wall, which was in Santa Monica. There was a hotel that had a pool. I can't remember the name of it. You remember Honest John's?
Yeah, I do.
Down the street from Honest John's, closer to Pico, there was a place where the Culver High kids congregated in the summer, and we started playing some beach volleyball. So I played a little bit there.
Okay.
And played a little bit my senior year in high school, but it wasn't until my freshman year in college that I started.
Did Culver City have any kind of team, or was it more like a PE class or after school or something?
It was nothing. It was just they had a tournament, a 2-man tournament.
Sure.
That they had, and it was won by John Arndt, who was a teacher. John Arndt and a girl.
Okay.
He beat all of us. So that's how I picked the sport.
That's how you picked it up. Also around this time, I guess you're a senior when you're going to meet your future wife?
No. I met her
after you graduated?
As a sophomore.
Oh, as a sophomore.
Uh-huh.
So that's it's an interesting story.
The meeting of her, or when we went to jail? Which
I was going to slide in easy, but I like how you cut to the chase.
She came. I was a member of the Teak fraternity. We had an open house, and Ted and Peggy, her mom and dad, brought her to the open house, and I saw her and asked her, if she would be willing to go out on a date. And sorry, let me turn that off.
Right.
Denny Boehle. And they said yes. So that was it. We started dating my sophomore year and got married December following my graduation.
So she would come probably to your basketball, volleyball games and the like?
She would come to all the games.
I noticed something from when you used to play volleyball.
Yeah.
One, I'd like to compliment you on your technique.
Thank you.
It's pretty solid. What's up with the over-officiating on one side of the court where they would have an up and a down?
That's how they did it for some reason.
Right?
Yeah, in those days, which was this man never called anything with reference to unders or nets. He would call nets occasionally.
Yeah.
But he was in charge of that.
And could you penetrate over the net, or you had to block straight up and down as a blocker?
Well, depends on the year.
Yeah.
And I can't remember
it changed
when.
in your competition. Yeah.
There was one year where you could not block over, so everybody would go up and soft block.
I kind of remember having to do that in beach.
Put their hands this way. Well, the beach was like that for a long time.
For a long time.
Had you been able to block over on the beach, I would have been much better than I was.
So you're young, married guy, and I think you got your teaching credential at Long Beach State?
I did. I went to Long Beach State to work on a teaching credential and a master's degree.
I cut you off on something. Could you? How did you end up in jail?
All right. So we are at a fraternity party, and this would make a great story or scene in a movie. So we're in Manhattan Beach at a fraternity party.
Okay.
And I'm with Tina, my wife, then my girlfriend, And one of my other fraternity brothers is with another girl that went to her high school. And my wife she doesn't drink. So we decided to take a walk down on the Strand, and I put 2 cans of beer in her purse. And I was holding an open can. My fraternity brother was holding an open can. We walked out of the house, took about 5 steps, and these lights hit us. And it was a police officer, and they arrested us for possession of alcohol as a minor.
Wow.
And of course, my wife doesn't drink, so now I won't tell you about the details of what happened. Why I ended up having, because of my loudmouth friend, we ended up not getting to make a call until about 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, goodness.
So now it's time to show up in court, and I had never met her father, and this was, I had taken her out maybe 3 times, and we show up in court. My father and me, my fraternity brother and his dad, this other girl and her dad, and Tina and, your Uncle Ted. Now, as we're standing there, a man in a suit comes up and says, "Are you the kids that were arrested for alcohol possession?" And we said, "Yes." And he said, "For $35, I will get you off." So my dad forks out the 35. The other 2 fathers and Ted says, "My daughter needs to learn a lesson."
Oh, yep.
And she is not. Now, she's the only one who wasn't drinking.
She was the only one not drinking.
And she was
the mule, though.
We all pled not guilty. The case got dismissed. The judge dismissed it based on something the attorney did. She pled guilty with an explanation, trying to tell the judge, "I don't drink," but the cans were. She was found guilty and put on probation until she was 21. So she had a record. She was the only one who didn't drink.
I did not know she was. Dang, I got to look at her in a whole different light now.
But I will tell you this, that one of the third toughest thing I've had to do in my entire life was to go to their house and knock on the door and ask him if I could take her out again. I was shaking when I knocked on that door.
How did he go through that?
He handled it pretty well. Thanks to Ted. Ted, I think, helped me a lot by telling his dad that he's an okay guy and it's not like you think, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, having 13 kids in the family,
they did have 13
sure
kids. He ran into plenty of that.
I'm sure he had enough information to help me with my cause.
You mentioned, you said the third toughest thing.
Yeah, the third toughest thing. The first toughest thing, I think, would have to be when I buried my son, who we found out in the 8th month of pregnancy that he was not alive, and Tina had to deliver the child stillborn, and then I had to carry this little box with was it Monsignor Wade? Somebody from St. Mark's, and Tina couldn't even go. She was too distraught.
Wow.
And the second toughest thing I think was I can remember was taking the bar exam and stressing over that. So those are my
life moments.
Those are my top 3.
You got your teaching credential at Long Beach State, and then were you also going into law school at the same time, or
no? No, when I was married and I decided what I wanted to do, I wanted to teach and coach. When I realized I wasn't good enough to play professional basketball, I wanted to teach and coach, and I started the program and I started doing a lot of student teaching, and I realized that I wanted to coach more than I did teach, and teaching was 80% of my day. And then I had a real bad experience with a football coach at Millikan High School who taught history. And when I met him, I was 22 years old, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. And he had a classroom that was designed, he had his desk was at an angle, and then he had his classroom designed in the form of a C or a U, so that if you walked out into the center of the room, your back would be to a third of the class, and so you'd have to turn. You have to be real careful where you'd stand. So I'll never forget this as long as I live. I went to 4th period, and he was the football coach. He had taken a personal day off. I show up, and he says, you can go home. I'm going to coach the football team. He was the head coach of Millikan High School. And he said to me, did you enjoy the day? And I said, I thought it was great. I said, your kids are all top-notch kids. They're disciplined. They do a great job. Smart kids. And he said, how did you like the way I had my classroom designed? And I said, I found it a little difficult because, you constantly got your back to the students, so you got to be real careful. But from that standpoint, everybody's close, so they have to pay attention to you when you're talking. So I thought, and he looked at me and he said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, what do you mean? He said, didn't you notice? And I said, what? He said, I put all the good-looking girls in the first row of every class.
Back then, it was just called harmless.
Yeah.
Now it's
and
a
I
hashtag.
just said, this is not for me.
Yeah.
If this guy after 20 years
is doing that,
is worrying about putting good-looking girls in the front row. So that turned me off.
Did you tell him I'm already dating a criminal?
No.
So you're getting married. You get married, and I just want to let everybody know 4 children, 12 grandchildren are going to come from this union. But you have a young 6-week-old, and so you need a washer and a dryer, and you go on the newlywed game.
Oh gosh, yes.
So do you remember this?
Oh, like it was yesterday.
Would this be first season, like newlywed game kind of first started?
No.
Or they had a little bit of play?
They had a little bit of play, and I'm not. I may be wrong, but I think your cousin even helped us get on the show, Kathy.
Oh, okay.
One of the Lennon sisters, and so we get on the show, and we're just knocking it dead. We're in first place, going to the bonus question,
which is where
was where I screwed up, and
so
I have a friend, a dear friend of mine who I've known since he was. Since we were 10 or 11 years old, and the question was, what will your husband say is the 8th wonder of the world? Right. That was the question. And Tina answered it, that's easy. He just won the family golf tournament trophy, and that's what he'll say is the...
Because it's a big 3-foot-high trophy sitting in the middle of your living room.
Correct. And I beat your Uncle Jimmy and your Uncle Bill. And so I come out and say, oh, that's easy. Paul Schwartz is the 8th wonder of the world. I mentioned this guy. And so we lost. And she was so upset that I missed that question. And the word got back to Paul. Paul's very, very, very affluent. He bought us a washer and dryer.
No, he did. Because Tina wasn't a big fan at the time because you were doing some all-night games and gambling with him.
Card games and so he says, I'm just going to buy you a washer and dryer. and he kind of said, thanks for the publicity. And that's the story.
As you went through law school and made that decision, you're at the same time we're picking up more and more beach volleyball. Is that about right?
Yeah. I was playing indoors. I played for the West Side Jewish Community Center.
Oh yeah. I
played Selznick and Lang were our setters. We had a very good team. We took 3rd in the nationals one year. I'm in law school, and which was a 4-year program. At nighttime, I had 3 jobs, 2 kids at the time. So my life was a little bit chaotic, to say the least. But my indoor volleyball stopped one night because, as you may or may not know, when you get close, the volleyball nationals are usually in May.
Yeah. And
the closer you get, the more you practice. So we started practicing 3 or 4 nights a week, like in mid-April. And after practice is over, some guy said, let's go get some pizza and a beer. And so instead of getting home at 8 o'clock, I'd be getting home at 9:30, 9:30 or 10. So one night I walked in the room in our house on Victoria, and Tina was sitting in a rocking chair with, Danny had been sick, and Danny was in her arms. No, Michael was sick. Danny was standing down. She was rocking. She's got Michael in her arms. I walked in the front door. She looked at me, and she just looked and she said, volleyball or me? And walked in the bedroom with the kids. That was my
Nice.
last. That was my last volleyball.
But beach volleyball fits into a little bit more of a family schedule because you can take the family with you on the weekend.
And
you're on a beach. They're occupied.
And
you're playing.
And she loved it. She was one of the reasons I actually played, because I used to go watch her playing. She's playing with Ernie Sawara. And I've been going crazy over the things you do when somebody makes a good play, and I'm in there, and I just worked and worked and worked, and just to make sure I could play at her level.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about passing the bar exam and getting involved in being an attorney, and how did that, like, I would imagine there's a lot.
So there's a lot of stress, a lot of stress and pressure on you. You know, you're in a room with depending on where you went. I went to Glendale Junior College to take the exam, and there's 500, and I didn't type at those days, and in those days there weren't computers. So what happens when you go into these exams is you get the test. The question is when you're reading it. And then all of a sudden, somebody will start typing an answer. And the typewriters in those days were noisy.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon you've got 150 typewriters going, and you're going, oh my God, because I wrote the exam, and you're trying to write and think at the same time while these typewriters are going crazy.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's an amazing experience. It's one I wouldn't want to have to do again.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing experience.
Kind of steeled you. And you took that same kind of competitive approach that you had in athletics into, in effect, being an attorney?
Yeah, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. Again, I wanted to compete. I wanted to do something competitively. When I realized I couldn't play in the NBA, I thought I could compete as a coach. And when I realized I really didn't want to do that, I wanted to do it, but I didn't want to start at that lower level. If I could have got a D1 job and
just gone from there,
I would have probably done that. So then I just said, maybe I'll try law school and I'll try being a trial lawyer. And I went, got my ticket, got a job, the only job I've ever had. Never switched firms.
At the time, it was Waters and McCluskey, or
when I joined, it was Waters, McCluskey, and Corcoran.
I see.
And then it became Waters, McCluskey, and Boehle.
And they're civil.
Civil.
Yeah. And so you just dove right in.
I tried my first case I was there less than 12 months. And I'll tell another interesting story.
Throw you right out.
There was a top plaintiff's attorney who officed on the same floor we did. And I've always been one, my philosophy in life has always been understand your priorities, deal with your priorities when it is a priority, but make time for yourself and your family. Don't let your job consume you to the point where, you're 25 years into your job and your kids are out of school, they've got their own families, and you haven't. Yeah. So that's always been my philosophy. And so one day I went and played golf, and I had a case with this big-time attorney. I was actually, it was my then boss's case that I was working it up on. And I went back to the office after golf at like 8:30 at night to get some work done. And he saw me, he was a workaholic, and he saw me leaving the office at like 10 p.m. And he's coming out of his office, and we run into each other. The next day, he offered me a job. He offered me a job because he thought that I was this workaholic kid that works till 10 o'clock at night. I was going to be a perfect fit for him. And I mentioned it to my then boss, and maybe that helped because they made me a partner in the firm.
They did.
2 months later, they made me a partner.
I wanted to bring something up because it was like such an important time for me, but also it's important that adults know that they're sometimes changing the perspective of a young person's life. So you used to be really kind to me because I was hanging out with your kids, Michael and Danny, and take me to various games here, there, and everywhere. I got to travel around with you, but most important, we went to Tempe, I think Arizona, when LMU made the 1980 NCAAs.
Jim McCloskey was on that team, and they played Arizona State, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. and it was awesome. We were hanging at the same hotel as a couple of the teams. So it was like Ohio State and DePaul were there. And so they were in the pool with us, and to be like 14, 15 years old, and these massive guys, and they're just college kids.
Yeah.
You know, they were eating our pizza that you had bought for us and all of this. But I met like Clark Kellogg and Mark Aguirre and these guys, and then to go to this big arena, and Byron Scott was on the team at Arizona State, and I knew who he was from Morningside, and I just was blown away at how exciting that was, and it really did just kind of open my mind to, wow, look at this. Like, this is big time. And, you know, it was fun to be in that arena.
Yeah, no. It was incredible. And to carry, although that team, I also went up to watch when they got to the Final Eight. And just a little trivia question that
the 1990 team, when they got to the Final Eight.
Not a whole lot of people are going to pay much attention to this, but the game before Loyola played Arkansas, UNLV played Ball State. And with 24 seconds to go in the game, Ball State has the ball down by 1. If Ball State makes that shot, they missed it, and UNLV ended up winning by 3 because they fouled and made 2 free throws. LMU plays Ball State, and in my opinion, goes to the Final Four. And
then goes to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Wow, that was something. So that was 1980 that I was talking about.
No.
And as far as the
yes.
as the NCAA, that was the year like UCLA made a run to the finals.
That's right.
Right. So I was going to jump up. You're doing your thing, still playing a little bit, but we start, me and your son and my buddy Ray, we start the Venice Backyard Championships in my backyard. And it's our first year, and you're coming just to watch.
Correct.
And there's an A player and a B player. And the A player, Gary Conley, his B player, walks out the back gate, not to return. And he needs a partner. And so you jump in.
Yeah, you made the mistake of putting 2 A players on the same,
yes.
same team.
Yes. So not being an experienced tournament director quite yet, we threw 2 A players, and you rolled to the title. And someday we're going to have a round table, and we'll make sure that you have to defend your title. We'll do that on the 50th anniversary or something. But more important, you know what I found out that day? Or subsequently the weeks after, is controversy is good for an event, because everybody started talking, and it just was, you were getting a giggle out of it, but everybody started to talk, and then it just kind of lit fire, and then from there we were able to always reference it and keep building on it.
And then expand it. And I want to back up because I never got to finish that story, which I think would be a great movie and a scene in a movie, and that was after we got arrested. You know, I'm playing. I'm a junior, and Vietnam is upon us, and I get a notice to appear for a physical for the Army. So
this is mid-'60s.
This is 64.
Yeah,
64. So I said I had to be there at 7 a.m. So I drive down there, and I think I'm going to be the first guy there. And I get there, and there's 500 people already there for a physical exam. So I'm standing there, and this guy comes down the stairs, and he has a microphone. He says, "Anyone who's ever been arrested, follow the yellow line upstairs." So I'm listening. I was arrested. So I'm following the yellow line, and I get into a line. The line is from here out to your hedges.
Okay.
And as I get closer, I can hear the guy at the desk say, his head never came up, last name first, date of arrest, and charge. And I'm listening to burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, what other crimes there was? I mean, you name it. Attempted murder. And I'm listening. So now it's my turn, and I'm standing there, and I've got a flat top. I have my Loyola jacket on, Letterman's jacket on, and his head never came up when he said, last name first, and I said, Boehle, Wayne. He writes it down. Date of arrest, I said, July 1963. Right then, he says, charge. And I said, possession. He said, cocaine? I said, no, sir. He said, marijuana? I said, no, sir. He said, what illicit drug was it, son? And I said, none I'm aware of. He says, well, what? And his head never came up. What was it? And I said, alcohol. He stopped, he put his pen down, he looked up at me, and he said, someone arrested you for the possession of alcohol? I said, yes, sir. He says, that's not what we're looking for. You go back downstairs. That's a dead true story.
You're like, well, actually, I was making my date mule some, illegal
and
substance.
someday I'll tell you the Troy Collier story too, which happened at LMU. Which, my years, I was all league as a sophomore, and in December of, and I think this is an incredible story. In December, we fly to Utah to play Utah State. Utah State had the number 1 scorer. They were the number 3 team in the country. They had the number 1 leading scorer in the country on their team. His name was Wayne Estes.
Okay.
So our coach designed a defense where the guards would overplay the guards so they couldn't get to the outside, and they can't get the ball to the forward, to Wayne Estes, so they called timeout. And during the timeout, Liddell Anderson, I think was the coach's name, he said to the center, Troy Collier, you go up and set a screen on the guard. Set a screen on the guard so the guard can get the ball to the outside to Wayne. So the first time they do this, one of my best friends, who was our center, Mike Lawler, yells switch. So now he's got this 6-foot guard, and I've got this 6'9" center,
Yeah.
and he's backing up into the paint, and he's yelling, "Little man on me."
Yeah.
He's waving his arms.
Like-
But the guard can't see over Mike's 6'6" arms, and he's trying to get, and he's backing up, and the scouting report said he was a wimp, didn't like to be pushed around. The center. I have both my arms on his back, and I'm pressing into his back like this with all my 170 pounds, and I'm trying to keep him from getting down to where he's going to get a layup. And he feels the pressure finally, and he takes his right arm, and he goes like this, and he broke my nose, broke my cheekbone, broke my zygomatic arch.
Oh, jeez.
I was on the floor. I swear I've never seen that much blood in Utah.
Goodness.
I'm laying on the floor. And the coach comes running out, and I said, I can't breathe. And he said, breathe through your mouth. So I did.
That's good advice.
I did.
That's good advice.
They take me to the training room. The 4 guys hold me down. My nose was out here. And the trainer gets on top of me, and I was crying, screaming, and they set my nose.
Yep.
And it popped open. And they said it twice, and it popped open. They packed it, and they flew me home that night. I had surgery the next day. So I'm telling you the story because Collier was a senior. All right, I was a junior.
Okay.
And he gets drafted by the Lakers to try out for the Lakers. So I plan this whole thing with my teammates because the only guys allowed in the gym are us. I had guys guarding each door, and Frank O'Neill was a Laker trainer.
So they're coming for practice.
Laker trainer, he would set out their workout gear by name. First, the rookies were all at the far end of the locker room that I dressed in. So I go down and I find Collier's practice unit gear, and I put analgesic bomb in his jock. I spread it in his jock.
How did I know that was coming?
Spread it in his jock. And myself and 5 of my teammates are now sitting in the stands watching practice. Who was the coach? The coach was...
No.
No.
About Vandikoff?
Nope. It was before Butch Vandikoff. It was... Frank O'Neill was the trainer. Fred Schaus.
Schaus, that's right.
Schaus comes out and goes, all right, man, let's go. Layups. Now, as you know, analgesic bomb doesn't begin to burn until you start to sweat. You got to start to sweat. So they're running layups. And all of a sudden, Troy Collier is grabbing his loin, and he's going, oh, and Schaus blows the whistle, so practice is stopped, and he goes, Troy, what the hell's going on? What's the matter? And he says, Coach, my balls is on fire. So
Jerry Lee Lewis got it from.
So Schaus says, what? He says, my ball. And then he reaches down and grabs what he realizes is analgesic bomb. He thinks it's a rookie prank, and he goes after, and LaRusso is laughing. He goes after LaRusso.
Rudy LaRusso.
He throws a punch with his right hand.
Oh, look at what you started.
He misses. LaRusso hits him with a left.
Oh, come on.
And this guy goes down like a fallen tree, like this. Kaboom. Like this.
He's on the ground like you were.
He's on the ground. Now, LaRusso is over him, and West and Baylor have got LaRusso. They've got a hold of him like like, don't. And he was ready to hit him again, but he never did. And, have you ever seen a fighter get up when he's knocked out on his feet? He gets up and he's
wobbling. And
all of a sudden he realizes his balls are on fire. He takes off and he runs into our showers. And our showers, as he's running, Frank O'Neill says, Troy, don't put water. And he turns the shower on.
Oh, boy.
And it exacerbates the pain.
That's
so, needless to say, I got even.
You got even with him?
With Troy Collier.
That is,
he ended up playing for the Globetrotters.
Did he ever know this? That was you behind
it?
it?
Kidding? No.
Oh, we're gonna.
I hope this doesn't come out. He looks me up.
Oh, we're hashtagging him. We're hashtagging Anil Bomb. We're hashtag balls on fire.
But back to that team, because this is something that your fan base probably doesn't know, but would be shaking their heads and saying, "Oh, how sad." So Wayne Estes is the leading scorer in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We play them, and the following week, he scores 35 points. He's going home. He's going home, and as he's driving down the road, he sees a car on fire in a snowstorm on the side of the road. He jumps out of the car and walks into a wire, electrocutes himself, and dies.
Goodness.
20 years later, I'm in Westwood with Tina.
Yeah.
And we're in this used bookstore. And I'm looking, I love bookstores, and I'm looking around, and I see this book. It's entitled Weird Sport Stories.
Yeah. I love those things.
I pick up the book, and I go to the table of contents, and down about number 6, it says the Wayne Estes story.
Wild.
This is 20 years later. So I go right to that chapter, and everything I'm telling you is dead honest true.
Wow, that's
except
wild.
The one factor that was in there that I didn't know as to why this is a weird sports story. That day, the day he died, he was walking down the streets of Logan, Utah, walked into an insurance agency, and bought a $10,000 accidental death policy on himself. That day.
Wild.
And that's why it was in that book.
Wow.
And that's a dead true story.
I could see where they didn't want to pay off on this when they were like, you're not going to go searching for a car crash, are you?
Dead true. So
wow, that's wild.
It's unbelievable. Wayne Estes was his name.
What, I would imagine you had a few crazy cases. And and any just like popped to your mind? Because so you go on to what I will say is like a really an illustrious career. You're named one of the top lawyers in the country. You've really had a lot of success. People don't even want to get into a court with you because you have such a outstanding record. But I would imagine along the way you had some quirky ones or some wild ones.
I could write a book of the things that I've seen.
This is the new book. You don't have to read, and you could just.
But the only people who would enjoy it would be lawyers, so they probably wouldn't buy it. But I've had a number of crazy cases. A couple that comes to mind. I tried a case in Fresno. I was up there for 3.5 months, and against one of the top attorneys from San Francisco. And the judge, he had 40 cases, and the judge said, "Pick your best case, and we'll try this one, and then the other 39 will hopefully fall into place."
Okay.
And it was a hydroelectric plant that was being built up in the mountains, and they were driving these trucks called dumpies, and the vibrations from these trucks were causing all kinds of back injuries and other injuries, kidney injuries, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying this case, and this man had the biggest ego of any lawyer I've ever met. And the bottom line is we get to the argument, the jury final argument. And in those days, you didn't have all this stuff you have today. Everything you wrote it down on a sheet of paper. And they teach you that because the last thing the plaintiff's attorney does is he puts the amount up, give me $5 million. And they teach you to just cover that when you get up to give your argument. He goes first, then you go.
Oh, I see. So you
give
up to the
finish. So that
it's like with a big notepad.
So the jury's not looking at it. So during his argument, he gets up and he walks over to the jury and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, when I was a young man growing up in Montana, I had to go to a one-building schoolhouse, grades 1 through 12. And sometimes in the winter, I'd have to walk 1.5 miles in the snow. And sometimes my friend and I would sneak out of class, and we would climb up on the top of the building. And there was the stovepipe that came up from the chimney from from down below that heated the school, we would bring a bag of rocks and we would throw the rocks down the chimney. And the rocks would go clunk, 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 but you could never hear them hit the ground. He walks over, he puts a finger in my face, and he said, "My worthy opponent, Mr. Boehle, reminded me of that story. Everything he's done in this case, clunk, 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 but nothing has hit the ground." Now I'm sitting there, and I'm super competitive, as you know, and I got to figure, how am I going to get even? What am I going to do? Now it's my turn.
You can't do the gel story. You can't do that.
No.
that
No,
moment
that wouldn't have
passed.
worked. Well, they also teach you that if you ask a jury a question and you don't get them to respond, if you're not getting nodding or shaking the head, you just forget it and move on.
Okay.
So I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to say has nothing to do with this case." I said, "But because my opponent mentioned something that also had nothing to do with this case, I said I thought I should comment on it." I said, "Do you remember his story about him walking in the snow to school?" And I get 3 or 4 of my jurors going like this. So I know I've got him. So I go on. I said, "Well, again, that had nothing to do with the case except to maybe engender some sympathy for him having to walk a mile and a half." I said, "However," I said, "Mr. V," I walked over to his exhibits and I flipped over to one of the jury instructions, 2.30. At the time, it was preponderance of the evidence was the name of the instruction. And I walked over and I put my finger in his face. I said, Mr. Veen, I said, "Perhaps if you hadn't snuck out of class so often, you would have learned how to spell preponderance."
Yes.
He put it
Touchdown.
down wrong. The jury cracked up. They cracked up laughing. This man had such a huge ego that he got up in his rebuttal and he said, "I didn't do the exhibits. My associate did them." So anyway, a long story
He scapegoated real quick.
that was one. There's been some embarrassing moments in my career as a lawyer, but interesting cases, crazy cases. I had a case one time where someone from the Middle East had brought their father out and was trying to teach him how to drive, mother how to drive down Santa Monica Boulevard.
Good place.
Down Santa Monica Boulevard.
Good place to learn.
And the car ends up going across 2 lanes, going eastbound on Santa Monica Boulevard, over a curb, into a construction fence, down into a ditch where there now exists a giant office building. And they were suing the construction company for not having a strong enough barrier to keep the car from going down into the fence.
Because this is a driving
I mean, it's
practice lane.
Every driving practice lane, and of course if they had put up a concrete wall, then the guy, and he didn't die. He was seriously injured, but he did not die.
Oh my goodness!
So I've had a number of crazy cases.
You had along the way 4 kids, of course: Mike, Danny, Chrissy, and Jenny, and 12 grandchildren now. I thought one thing that's really unique was Mike, who Mike and Danny, who I of course grew up with, but Mike having 3 boys, your 3 grandkids, all on the same Division I volleyball team at the same time.
And UCSB.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That was great. First time in the history of the sport.
I would imagine, right? I don't even know. I don't even know that anybody's thought to research something like
never
that.
Happened. First of all, you got to have kids banged back to back to back, real quick. That's number one. And then second of all, they all have to be good enough to be able to play. Of course. D1 volleyball.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Now I wanted to move a little bit into some of the items on the Hank Gathers case, because we were there the other day and watched the statue get put up. It was really a magical time at Loyola. That season, those seasons.
Those
Actually,
2 years.
Westhead was there for like 5 years, and he had a good team most every year. Coach Paul Westhead.
Yeah, they were representative, but obviously not as good as they were when he had his system and he had the right players to run it.
He had the right players, yeah. And his system was something else.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very
would you have liked to play in that kind of system?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I was a real good defensive player,
Mm-hmm.
and I was smart. One of the reasons I played, I could shoot, and I was a good defensive player. Wasn't a good ball handler, but I could shoot, and this was no zero defense.
Right. They were encouraging you to score quickly
right.
so that you would tire out.
That's right.
And they did all their training right in on the dunes of Manhattan Beach.
That's
there.
right.
right? Where they could have got caught for holding beer down in that area if they were if they were careful.
They don't put it in the purse of their girlfriend.
Exactly. So so they're in tremendous shape, and that's really exciting. And Gersten Pavilion is selling some tickets, and they're putting up big numbers. So I mean, there's a lot going on there. And when Hank had those problems, it wasn't too public. That you definitely knew that, you didn't know that he had that. I guess it was in the news, but I know when he died, it obviously the rest of the country went, wow. And then for, Bo to shoot those free throws left-handed and for the team to, go on and still have victory throughout. I mean, that was a really, emotional time. So I could imagine once the family went to look for damages against the school, that was a downer.
Yeah, it was. It was not unexpected, but certainly because of the love the school had for Hank and vice versa. Don't forget he had spent 1 or 2 years at USC, both he and Kimball both, and for whatever reason they were not. Either they didn't fit into that program, or they didn't like.
I think they changed coaches maybe or something.
They did change. Of course, they had their friend from Philadelphia, who at one time was an assistant coach at Loyola. I can't remember his name. He actually brought him out here.
It was all Philadelphia connection. Westhead's a Philadelphia guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And
so that's what made the landing spot at LMU work for those two.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. It was a good fit. And then the other players that Paul had recruited. I mean, Jeff Fryer made a living off of shooting threes.
Wide open threes.
And the other guard who came in, who's Terrell Lowry. Terrell Lowry was on that team. And one of my teammates' sons was on that team, but he was a redshirt. He did not play that year. Brian McCloskey, who ended up playing the next year, he was on that team also. So it was fun to go to. I had season tickets. I was not there in December when he had the syncopal episode. I had given those tickets, ironically, to my high school teammate that I was talking about earlier, Tom McPherson. His son, both of his sons went to LMU to play tennis. And so I'd given my season seats to him for that game. And his youngest son has a little heart anomaly. And Hank goes down on the floor in December. Oh, wait a minute. I'm wrong. He was there the night he died.
Whoa.
The December tickets I'd given to somebody else.
Somebody else.
He was there in March.
But Hank had that episode in December, I think at Gersten, right?
That's correct.
In Gersten Pavilion is his name. And then, but this, when Hank died, was in the conference championship game, I think?
No.
Semifinals or something?
It was in the quarter or semifinals against, I believe, Portland.
Yeah, Eric Spolstra was on Portland's team.
I think
Isn't that wild?
Against Portland.
Yeah.
And what 90% of the public doesn't know is when Hank went down in December, they took him out of the game, sat him down, took him back to the locker room, and couldn't figure they realized his heart rate was up, but didn't realize what was the cause. They put him through a battery of tests to the point where they advised the school that he cannot play anymore because they could not determine what the defect was. And when I say that, I say it because his heart rate was incapable. They were incapable of getting it up high enough on stress treadmills, on running around a track, to see where the defect in his heart was. They couldn't.
I see.
He was in such phenomenal condition.
He would like condition before games and stuff. He was in phenomenal condition.
Incredible condition.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it, so he wasn't going to get to play. And that was the initial decision of the medical.
I see.
The medical staff. Okay,
so this leads up to what may or may not have been all kinds of things. He may or may not have taken the medication. So on and so forth. But once he does die, I think the family has 4 major charges. And they had, was it Bruce Fagel?
He was their attorney.
I looked at his Facebook site. He looked like an interesting guy.
Interesting guy. He's a doctor and a lawyer.
Wow.
It's a doctor and a lawyer.
Right.
Okay. So the gathers, Sue claimed that, one, that West had induced Hank's doctors to reduce Hank's dosage of Enderol. 2, the doctors did not properly monitor the effects of gathers on the lower dosage. 3, that the Loyola Marymount school doctor, team trainer waited too long to administer life-saving procedures after he collapsed. And 4, that perhaps gathers should not be playing basketball at all. So is that about right?
Those are the allegations in the complaint, and those are the ones that we had to. Some of those obviously were. I was representing the school, the coach, the athletic director, who was my teammate, and the trainer, and Chip Schaefer. I had all.
Was Chip Schaefer the one who played at Pally?
No.
Different one. Okay.
No, different Schaefer.
Okay.
But he was the Boston Celtic trainer.
Oh wow.
Chip Schaefer.
Okay.
And also Laker trainer.
Wow.
Chip Schaefer.
And then Brian Quinn, athletic director at the school, but he was a teammate of yours from back in the day?
I was a sophomore. He was a senior.
Okay.
And I taught him how to play volleyball. He turned out to be a good volleyball player. And
what were the particulars when they were filed a $32.5 million lawsuit or something?
That's correct.
Okay.
$32.5 million. And what surfaces after the unfortunate death of Hank Gathers is a child that nobody knew anything about. And his name was Aaron Crump, I believe.
Crump. That's right.
And he was 6 years old. And Hank was 23.
Yeah.
So he had this kid at 17.
Right.
Nobody knew about him. So now he surfaces as an heir, and he gets in the lawsuit with another Philadelphia lawyer. Now Westhead's friend, one of his best friends, college classmate, was a guy named Richie Phillips.
Okay.
Richie Phillips was the Major League Baseball umpire's lawyer.
Oh, yeah. He was always in all those big arbitrations. And
I'd get calls from Richie Phillips at 4 a.m, our time.
Right, because he's
at 7 o'clock in Philadelphia. And he'd yell and scream about, you got to get Westhead out of this case, you got to do this, you got to do that. And he'd start swearing on the phone. I'd hang up on him. I'd say, Richie, I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to talk like this. And it got down to where one day we had a 3-way call. And I will never forget this. I said, Richie explained what he thought should be done. I explained to Paul what I thought should be done and how. And Paul had to make a decision, and he chose to go my way.
Okay.
And Richie has passed on, but he actually got fired from if I remember correctly, from the Major League Baseball.
Part of the steroid stuff?
I don't know what it was about, but I remember he was their lawyer for a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
Yep. And so the case had a whole lot of tangents. The medication was one thing. The issue of Paul Westhead calling the doctor to change medication. I can tell you what happened there if you want to hear that. What happened was he was put on a program. Hank was. And the contract, because he had to sign a contract that he would abide by this, was he would wear a heart monitor during the week of practice.
Okay.
And then on Fridays, he would go in for some sort of a test.
Contract was with the doctor?
With Daniel Freeman.
Okay. And
Michael Millman and one other physician whose name I can't recall. That he agreed to do this, and the school agreed to do it. That they would get him to the doctor's office. So this is going along. This happens in December. So roughly...
First incident in December, so it's like January, February.
Roughly, no, not even that late. Roughly in December, after they had figured out what they could do to get him to play, he signs his contract. And everything is going along okay. And what the deal was, they put him on a dosage of medication that made him like a 13-year-old kid, lethargic. Couldn't move, he wasn't fast, but it was the effects of the medication.
Indrol.
So, I don't even remember whether it was Indrol or not.
Okay.
But at the end of the week, what they were doing was they had a test, which I know nothing about, but they had a test that would allow them to reduce the medication. So the objective was to observe these test results and get to a point where, because once they knew where the defect was, which they finally figured out through a test that off the record I'll tell you about. Once they figured out what his problem was, they needed to get to a point where it was a non-lethal issue with the right dosage of medication.
Got it.
So they kept reducing it. They had a trip. It was a very important trip for Hank Gathers. They went back to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They played St. Joseph's and Villanova. 2 schools, his hometown. Everybody was there to see him, and he was awful.
Oh,
He was awful.
I kind of remember that. Yeah.
He was awful. He came in the locker room after the game, after one of the games, and he grabbed lockers, was throwing lockers on the ground, was screaming and yelling, and this is a part of a public record, and he yelled out, "I ain't taking no more fucking medication," in front of Westhead. So, that night, Westhead calls the doctor. And as you know, doctors' notes, they have notes, and these notes came during the pendency of the litigation or became an issue, and they were discussing what the doctor, Melman, I think it was Melman, had written as to what Westhead said. Westhead called him and said, "Doc, I can't play him. He's like a 13-year-old kid with the medication he's on. Can we change the medication?" Now, and I may not be quoting his exact words, but what he meant by that is there something different that we can give him that's going to make him a better player. And the doctor's response was, if we were to do that, he'd have to start all over again at a higher dosage. So no, we're leaving it right where it is. And of course they pick up on that, where the coach was demanding that they change the medication, or take him off the medication, which was not true.
He's not a doctor.
Which was not true. So, I guess only God knows what really happened that day. But the experts were of the opinion that had the medication continued to be taken, this would not have happened.
I see. So he more than likely.
Oh yeah, but I really didn't get into the juicy part of the story, which is what cost one of the doctors $1 million, and that was this. His treating doctor was a guy that I know. He's actually a good golfer. His name was Hattori. He was the heart guy.
Did he beat Jerry West in golf?
No.
Okay.
No. Oh, now he might be able to. So, Friday comes, and Hank doesn't show up for the test at the hospital.
The Friday before the conference tournament? Or
No, they played Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
So he doesn't show up for the test on Friday, which is part of the contract. The hospital or the doctor calls and says he can't play. Westhead gets the phone call and calls Hank in the office Saturday morning. Calls him in and says, "Hank, what the hell is going on? You can't play tonight." He says, "What do you mean I can't play tonight?" He said, "You didn't go in for the test yesterday. You've been doing it all these weeks, and now all of a sudden," he said, "I was so busy, Coach, I had things going on." And he said, "Hank, you can't." He says, "I'll take the test right now. Call him. I'll go shoot over there and I'll take it right now." Calls the hospital. The hospital says, "All of our technicians that run this test, whatever it was, are gone. And if you want to do it, we have to bring in another whole unit, and it's going to cost the school about $30,000. And there's no way the school is going to pay for that."
Right.
So Westhead said, "Is there any way that we can?" He says, "Let's get a hold of his heart surgeon." So they get a hold of the doctor, the heart surgeon, and he is leaving for Palm Springs for a bachelor party and a wedding.
Who's leaving for that?
the doctor.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And
well, Hank got out there too.
Hank begs him, you got to clear me to play. You got to clear me to play. And he says, let me look at your previous week's tests.
Oh boy.
So he looks at the previous week's tests.
Let's see.
And he says, and this is what cost him $1 million. He said, this is on the record, I'm going to be out of town. I'll have my assistant, it's the guy that you need to call if you need to call him, because I'm out of town this weekend. I'm leaving. He said, but if you feel your heart start to race during the game, take yourself out of the game.
Oh, right. Like that's
now, believe it or not, because I lived with this for years, it was sound medical advice. It was okay. Based on the testing and based on him taking the medication, it was okay to say that. But as a result of that, he ended up paying $1 million.
And what about to the point that the care given at Gersten was substandard? Or
Yeah, it was. There was a few sides on that, issues on that as to what do we do, how do we do it, when do we do it. This was all discussed after the first Syncopal episode back in December.
Mm-hmm.
And it was decided, and probably rightfully so, and if I'm not mistaken, the medical evidence was it would the time that it took to get from the gym to the training room to administer the defibrillator.
Is that where the defib was in the training room?
Yes. The time to get there would not have made a difference. That's my recollection of what the test was. Now, of course, the plaintiff was going to argue differently. But the decision, and people don't think about this, the decision, if I'm not mistaken, the night he passed away, there were at least 2 other minor issues with people having fainting spells or from observing him on the floor.
Oh, I see.
Okay?
Okay.
So their thought process was, if we paddle this guy in the middle of the basketball court, and you see, and it's you see about the body jumps, you're going to have, of the 3,500 people that were there,
that's going to escalate.
You're going to have other issues. So
everybody was trained and stuff, because I know even at that eventually, I don't know whether it was that case, but that certainly brought notoriety. But even when I was an athletic director in high school, we had to go through that same training, know how to use what was in effect a carryable defib machine.
Defibrillator. Yeah. No, and Chip Schaefer was trained in the use of that medical piece of equipment.
Yeah, and I found that interesting that the family was like, we were traumatized by the way they carried him off the floor. And I thought, how else, are you going to carry him off the floor? You're not going to bring a tent out and a golf cart.
Yeah, it was a sad thing. The family, I think, eventually reconciled with the school, with Westhead.
Yeah.
They look during the litigation phase. They have to do what is in their best interest. But we had videotapes of his mother holding up signs during the course of the game. Go Hank, you're the best. And her testimony was she told Westhead she didn't want him to play. Please don't play my son.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want to, and that's part of the.
It's part of it.
The legalistics of how and I get it. I understand it. It's a thought. One thing I've learned in 48 years of practicing law before I became a mediator, the thing I've learned is the mind is an amazing thing. 2 people can look at an accident site, non-party witnesses, and see the same thing, but yet testify completely differently. And it's
and the more the story's told, the more that may come to light and then be remembered as real.
Correct.
And so it expands, and then sometimes you don't have the real facts.
But where I was going with that point was, the more you convince yourself that's what you saw, the more inflexible you become, even when it becomes obvious that you didn't see it correctly. You stand by your principles. You stand by what you saw, what you observed, and it's amazing.
School was 32.5 was what the family was looking for, and I think the school's insurance company picked up $545,000 in some kind of payment.
It wasn't very much.
Is that about right?
I can, if you want to hear the story,
Sure.
the backstory on that. They fly me up to San Francisco, and I'm meeting with all the prefects, all the insurance people, all the excess insurance people. There's probably 15 people in the room, and I spent 45 minutes trying to convince them to let me vindicate the school.
Yeah, you said, but on a personal level, I would have liked my clients vindicated by a jury.
Right.
Because I believe they would have been.
I wanted to vindicate the school, the coach, the athletic director, and the trainer, and I thought I could do that. They asked me what it would cost to vindicate the school, and I gave them a number. I forget what the number was. I probably said something like $1.6 million. And they said, what can you resolve this case for? And I said, I would hope I could resolve it somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000, which is about half of what it's going to cost them to be vindicated.
Yeah.
They met for about 40 minutes. I sat down, and then they called me back in, and they said, we are in the process of trying to raise $80 to $100 million for buildings that are now built in the last 30 years. We don't want the adverse publicity. Your job is to get the case settled. So I did.
Okay. All right. Well, took 30 years, but there seemed to be a lot of love all around the statue being unveiled. Mom had a very emotional moment in front of the statue, but then the family, took the picture, and it certainly is a beautiful statue. Same artist or sculptor that did the Elgin Baylor one at Staples.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
it's a picture of him holding a ball in one hand, isn't it? I mean, a statue.
Yeah. So it's really it's beautiful, and then the team was recognized during halftime. The team that was playing wore the throwback uniforms, which was kind of fun to see those unis out on the court.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That was kind of fun to see that. And then
they lost to USF.
They lost by 2
points.
Yeah.
Good game.
And Gersten, I don't remember it being. I forgot that one side is like basically the red, and then the other side is blue. So everything up on the wall on this side, even the banners are all blue, and everything up on the wall and everything over here is red. It's got a nice aesthetic to it.
Yeah,
that looks nice.
And they're in the process of raising money to. I don't believe they're going to be building a new gym. I don't know if we have the space, but I think they're going to expand this one somehow, some way.
Gersten the second, I guess. It was Gersten the first who the gym was named after, and Gersten the second.
Right.
Was he like friendly with Hank or something? Because I saw him in the paper a lot.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Friendly with most of the kids on the team.
Did that create problems for the athletic department?
It did and it didn't, because it really never came to light as to whether he violated any of the ethical rules of giving gifts where they weren't supposed to be given. So that never really materialized.
Okay.
His depot was taken.
Yeah.
There are so many depots taken in that case.
It's nothing new in collegiate athletics for
a booster.
For boosters to be involved. It just was. I found it interesting when I kept seeing the name Gersten pop up, because I thought maybe not so much the guy who put up the money for the gym.
Yeah, no, it's and he did put the money up for the gym, a large portion of it. That's why the gym is named after him.
Yeah. Okay. Last one thing, and then you got to answer a series of questions, Wayne, because you're going to be on the stand pretty soon here.
Good.
Okay. But can you tell me a little bit about, you've been a longtime member of the LA Athletic Club. I found it very exciting that the U.S. Open's coming that way.
No, I've never been a member of the LA Athletic Club.
Never?
Los Angeles Country Club.
I'm sorry.
Different facility.
You know why I wrote my notes to me, LA Athletic Club, because of how much I go there, because it's an AAU thing.
That's right.
And so the Los Angeles Country Club.
By the way, I think the Hathaways are the ones who owned the LA Athletic Club. They also owned at one time Riviera Country Club, the golf course.
That was their country.
And then they sold that. The Japanese, I think, have bought the Riviera Country Club. So the Los Angeles Country Club is where I play golf.
LA Country Club,
right.
And I've gone out there a couple times with you. Had awesome time. But I found it really interesting because I remember they're always very private, if you will. But now that they're going to host the U.S. Open, do you know how that came to be?
I sure do. When I joined there in 1980, every single year, the PGA would come and ask to get a turn, and it would be voted down. I am now the old guard. I was the young guard back in 1980, and as an old guard, they didn't want it. Didn't want the publicity. Didn't want people to know anything about the course. And of course, times have changed, and attitudes have changed. And the young guard, who's now the old guard, loves the idea of people seeing our course and seeing it. And we had the Walker Cup there. Which was held just a couple of years ago, and as a kind of like a test to see how it went down. Now that's not as widely known, obviously, as the U.S. Open, but then the board voted to approve this. Now, just as a side note, if we had to vote again, I think I would vote against it.
Is it gonna take your Tuesday golf date away?
It's going to tie up our golf course for much longer than anybody even dreams that it's going to do. But the curiosity, the intrigue, for me is to see what they score on the course that's U.S. Open.
That to me is fascinating.
That's
going to be great, and also it's almost like getting to see behind the curtain for the rest of the country, because you hear about the Los Angeles Country Club, but not everybody has got a chance to really see what it looks
it's
like.
Ranked number. I mean, for a course that's over 100 years old, it's ranked like number 16 in the country.
Yeah.
And there's no water on it. There's water hazards, but there's no water unless it rains. So it's an interesting. It is
an interesting course.
A design course, and you can play. It's going to play 7,500 yards, and I believe that if they cut the fairways in, which they're going to do, and they speed up the greens, which they're going to do, that the scoring is not going to be as easy as people think it's going to be, because this is
that's in the
course.
Tradition of the U.S. Open too.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
So I'm predicting 4 to 5 under wins the tournament.
Okay.
So
nice. All right. Yeah, I'm going to tag that one. So we talked about your boy Mike being a very successful volleyball coach at Loyola High School, having won, I forget, the 6 section titles. I think. Four or five states. Yeah. Now your boy Danny has had his share of success at the LA Country Club.
Yeah, he turned out to be a very good golfer, and
could he beat Jerry West?
He could probably beat Jerry West today.
Oh, okay. Now the revenge has a sweet taste.
Him today.
Okay.
You know, Jerry is an interesting guy. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time in his life, he was a +3, which is a real good golfer.
Really good.
He actually quit playing for 6 years, never touched a club, because he could not deal with shots that weren't going where he wanted them to go. And it's fascinating, because now he plays the game for fun, and he's much, much better. At it. He gave me a copy of his book, West by West.
Oh, it's unbelievable book.
I couldn't read it. I started.
It's rough.
I couldn't read it. I didn't want to know about the demons.
When he was young, geez.
Yeah. So I didn't read the book. I read 20 pages of it and said, I don't need to read this. But I see him probably 2 or 3 times a week.
He when I told you about that time he came to Archer, and he was so forthright. The plan was I was going to interview him and ask him some questions, so I read the book and so forth. But he goes, I wrote some notes. And so I wasn't involved much at all. But I sat there fascinated, because he spoke so much from the heart about what it was growing up like he did, dealing with depression. All the parts of his life. He was so forthright and transparent. It was fascinating to watch these young people who were really in the area to watch him, because their dads and their grandfathers went, Jerry West is coming. Oh, right?
Yeah.
But anyways.
But he's such a wonderful, if you're a friend of his, he'll give you the shirt off his back if in time of need. And, if I ever needed him to sign anything and just bring it in, no problem. if he's a friend of yours, he's a friend for life. And I will tell you one, if I can, tell you one Jerry West story, which is a funny story. We're playing golf at LA on the South Course, and we're playing two people from Bel Air, and we're playing for a substantial sum of money. That Sunday, the day before, we played on a Monday. This day before, the one and only time in the history of golf, a PGA Tour player won a tournament putting one-handed.
Okay. I don't remember this.
His name is Mike Hulbert. You can look that up.
Okay.
The only golfer ever to win a PGA tournament putting one-handed. Now, Jerry and I were playing these two the golfers from Bel Air on the South Course at LA, and I got a number of shots. One of the other persons got another shots, and then Jerry and this other person were close. Anyway, we get on the first hole, and Jerry knocks it on the green. He's 15 feet from the pin. He misses the putt. He gets in the cart, and we're driving to the second tee, and he goes, I can't make a putt. God damn it. I can't make a putt. I'm going to putt one-handed. This is on the first hole.
This is after one hole.
After one hole. And I said, Jerry, you're fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. So from then until the 18th tee, he threatened to putt one-handed 8 times after missing birdie putts. And we get to the 18th hole, and the match is dead even, and the winner is going to win like $400 or $500.
Okay.
So we're dead even. I get a shot on that hole, and one of the other persons gets a shot. I get up and I hook it out of bounds onto Wilshire Boulevard.
Okay.
So I'm done.
You're done.
So it's Jerry against the two of them. He hits a great drive. He knocks his. Well, the other guy hits the ball much shorter than Jerry, lays up short of the green. He gets a stroke. The other person knocked it in the trap, left it in the trap, picked up. So now it's the stroker against Jerry. The stroker's on the green, 30 feet from the pin, lying 3.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry's on the green, 5 feet from the pin, lying 2. So if they both two-putt, we end up tying. He putts one-handed on the last hole.
Got a feeling he knocked it in, didn't he?
4-putted. So we lose. I take him out to the parking lot. He opens his trunk. He takes his clubs off. He puts his clubs in his trunk. And I go, hey, Jer. And he goes, yeah. And I said, Mr. Clutch my ass. And he said, screw you, and got in the car and drove off. And that's a dead true story.
I love it. I got him the day he showed up. That day was the Golden State Warriors, who he was consulting for, had won the 73rd game to break the regular season record. They broke the Bulls record for most wins.
Oh, yeah.
But it was also the morning after, and so he came back from San Francisco, and it was the morning after Kobe's last game had dropped 60. And so he came.
By the way, I was at Kobe's game when he got 81.
Oh, 81? You were at that game?
I was there.
Oh, man. Now, that one, they had to come from behind and everything.
I was there. That team is awful. Toronto, I think it was.
Yeah, Toronto. And Jerry West goes, 50? He got 50 shots? He goes, you give me 50 shots, I drop 90 easy.
Well.
Crack me up.
People don't, because he's a real good friend of mine, and I think he's one of the best ever to play the game. 2 things I would say about his playing level as opposed to his managerial level, but because he has skills there too. Mm-hmm. No one evaluates talent better than this man. But if you look at films of him playing, he could bounce the ball with one hand, right hand, and move it to his left and back again and go up faster than any human being I've ever seen and get open. He played, his second year in the NBA, he averaged 27 points a game, no three-point shot.
No three-point shot.
No three-point shot. He would have been close to one of the top
scores
if they had a three-point line. It was unbelievable.
What was it, 59, I guess, or something? West Virginia lost. He lost with them in the finals of the NCAA, and he's just like, not a day I don't think about it. But he got MVP there, and then he also got MVP of a series only losing player
Correct.
to ever get
the
NBA
MVP.
and I think in college too, which shows how much people thought of him.
Well, here's a trivia question for you. In the history of basketball, everybody knows that the only player ever to score 100 points in an NBA game was Wilt Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
There has been one player to score 100 points in a college basketball game.
Oh, was it that Rick Mount or something like that?
No.
The guy in Indiana?
No. And he was a teammate of Jerry West on the Lakers.
Imhoff?
No.
Who?
Furman Frank Sylvie. He went to Furman University.
Furman.
Scored 100 points in a college basketball game. And
nobody knows about that.
No one. That's one of my best trivia questions.
It is a good one. Nobody knows that because normally I can get those. Huh. All right, here we go, Wayne.
Yeah.
You're in the chair.
I'm in the chair.
Here it comes.
All right. Do I have to tell the truth?
Yep, you do.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth? So
whatever.
Whatever. Okay.
Don't let a myth get in the way of a good story.
All right.
Best opposing player you ever competed against?
Do I have to guard him, or is this on the court?
Yeah, you're on the court with him.
Okay. I would say one of two. Either one of three. Either Erwin Muller for USF, Ollie Johnson at USF, or John Rudimetkin at USC.
Best teammate you ever had?
Best teammate I ever had would have been, I've had a number. I'm going to say two, one of two. I'm going to say Ken Peterson or Brian Quinn or Detroit Flanagan, one of those three. Top three.
I like the guys named after a city. Most memorable comeback you remember playing?
Most memorable comeback in high school was against El Segundo at our gym, and we were down by like 12 points, came back, and with 18 seconds to go in the game, they threw the ball to me in the corner, and I went up to shoot it. We were up by 1, and the coach was yelling, "No! No!
Stop!"
And I shot it, and it went in, and he said, "Atta baby."
Nice.
My most memorable comeback.
Nice. On that note, I'll say it because your boy was coaching, but Vaughn, Stephen Irvin team that they were on at Loyola High School, I think we're down in set 5.
I was there.
At Newport Harbor, 14-9 or 14-10?
No, it's actually 14-11.
14-11.
14-11. But,
Yeah.
I remember every play the way it goes. Your son blocked the ball.
That was wild.
Zoppy blocked the but Irvin's going back to serve.
He jump serves like a
machine. And he was 50% during the year.
Yeah.
So I said, it's over.
That was some kind of comeback.
That was a great comeback.
What would have been your most memorable win?
In basketball?
Sure.
Volleyball?
Any sport.
Oh.
What sticks out in your mind?
Gosh.
I mean, VBC,
well,
obviously, we know that, but outside
my
of that
most
one.
memorable win, Richard Segrist and myself beat Tom Shamalis and Jim Mingus in a beach tournament.
Okay.
That's a memorable win. But
that's memorable.
But it doesn't compare to some of the bigger basketball games that we won. But that's
all right. That sticks out.
Yeah.
First pet.
First pet was a dog named Fella.
First car.
First car was a 1930, 36, 37 Chevy that we called the Mustache because we took out, one of my friends in an auto shop took out whatever the front things were and then painted it, covered it over and looked like it had a mustache.
All right. Favorite sports team as a kid?
The Brooklyn Dodgers.
Nickname as a kid?
Butch.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Favorite board game?
Now or?
Sure.
Now. My favorite board game now would be, what's the name of the game? Tina and we play it all the time. I think it's called Secret Agent.
Okay. Oh.
No, it's Code Names. It's called Code Names.
I remember that they had that at the
Code
Spy
Names.
Museum.
Code Names.
Favorite main dish?
Oh, hamburger meat over mashed potatoes and gravy.
Solid. Your kids used to die for my mom's meatloaf pie. They would come over. They would say, "Hey, should we go play football at your house?"
No, I've got to have gravy. I can't have it dry.
So good.
I love a good shepherd's pie, but hamburger meat over mashed potatoes.
Favorite dessert?
Which I get for my birthday every year.
Yeah.
Chocolate cream pie.
Okay.
Homemade.
I know you're a movie buff. Favorite movie?
Of all time?
Sure.
The Godfather.
Mm-hmm. Favorite musical group?
Venice.
All right. They finally got on the board. That's good. Favorite author?
My favorite author would be... Oh, gosh, not Nicholas. Ian Fleming.
Favorite professional athlete? All time.
Jerry West.
Nice. I think we already know where you met your wife. Frat party.
At a frat party. No, frat open house.
Frat open house. And this is funny because I asked everybody, and how about your first date? Was first date was when she was
Our first date
muling
was
beers?
the first date was the day we went to jail.
Wow. It's good times. You have a favorite quote?
I do, actually. My favorite quote is, "Wasted time is wasted life, and sleeping is a waste of time."
Santa's heard that somewhere before. Name all 12 of your grandchildren, youngest to oldest. I'm just joking.
I can do that.
You can?
Absolutely.
Knock it out.
Parker,
Mm-hmm.
Hayden, Davis, Ella, Emmett, Kate, Jordan, Emmett, Kate, Jordan. I'm trying to do it in order.
Yeah.
And then, I skipped one. He's before Emmett. It would be Noah. It's 10, and then Quinn, Cece, Sloan, and Sasha.
Sick.
Nice.
That was solid. I actually wrote that down. I told my wife Christine, I'm gonna give this one. Then I'm gonna let him off the hook. But you nailed it. Nice. Okay. And then normally we do a pop culture quiz on, because we're the show of record of 1980s television.
Oh.
However, I did up some different ones for you. Ready?
Good.
Pick one of the three. Dragnet, Law and Order, or Murder, She Wrote.
Law and Order.
The only one I watched was Dragnet.
Nice. I know. I was hoping you'd say that. Best fictional defense lawyer. Perry Mason, Atticus Finch, or Ben Matlock.
Wow. I would go with Atticus Finch, because the job he did was unbelievable. Perry Mason did it every week, so I'd go with Atticus.
Best courtroom movie. 12 Angry Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, or My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny.
That's hoping you choose that. Whose case would you take? And this is the pro athlete murder division. O.J. Simpson, Reuben Carter, who was the middleweight, I think 1966, or Aaron Hernandez.
Ooh.
If you had to defend one of the three.
Reuben Carter.
Yeah, Hurricane was. All right. Whose case would you take? Historical division. Joan of Arc, 1431. Here's heresy. John Brown, 1859, treason, first-degree murder, insurrection. Or Jesus, AD 30, treason, blasphemy.
Wow. Only because I know the results of all three. I think the easiest one to get either a reversal or an acquittal would have been Joan of Arc. So I would take her.
Okay, fair enough. I thought I just was throwing out the Jesuit selection. Okay.
No. He had no chance. That was. Plus, he wanted that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
it makes a big difference.
How about whose case would you take in the sports division? All right, the Black Sox, who in 1921, I think, was when the court case came, but I think it was 1919 or 18.
1919.
1919. They were charged with fixing. Although they got off, some of the players got banned. All right, that's one. Ali versus the United States military, which it was a refusal to step forward. I think that was 67. Or Kurt Flood versus Major League Baseball, which was a reserved clause of 1970.
What about the cheating Astros?
I'd rather have a fourth one. I'd rather take Pete Rose's case against
tell me about it.
Against Major League Baseball.
I'd like to hear about that, actually.
All right. But for the three you gave me, I would take the what was the first one?
The Black Sox.
I'd take Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He got punished, and he didn't try to throw the games.
That's right.
And he was one of the greatest players ever.
One of the great World Series ever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling about Pete Rose is that, and this comes from being a gambler myself. I think the ban against him, I think his punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been punished enough. And had he bet $1 on one of his games,
mm-hmm.
then I would have said the ban for life is sufficient. But because his betting was on baseball, based on his knowledge, which by the way, the hypocrisy of some of the rules that come down, the rulings that come down from Major League Baseball and other sports, you can bet on any baseball game you want to bet on. You go to Las Vegas, you can bet on any game you want to bet on. It's legal in the state of Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
But because he was a manager, baseball looked upon this as bad for the game, going back to but he wasn't talking to anybody to get inside information. He was using his skills as a manager to bet. So I think that he should have been punished.
Yeah.
They should have kept him out for a number of time, but he was one of the best players ever to play the game.
He was.
He deserves this place in the Hall of Fame.
If we had a Hall of Fame, we'd induct you, Wayne.
Thank you.
And I do want to thank you for always being a great model for me. I always respected you, and in particular, when I was young, taking me around to those games really opened my eyes to what I could maybe do for a living, and so I appreciate that.
The good news for me is I got myself into a family that there's never a dull moment. There's always they come to me a lot with issues and problems, and I actually welcome that, and I would never turn anyone away, and it's the most incredible family. I come from a family of two,
yeah.
And when my first involvement into this family, I'll never forget when I went to her house.
13 children.
I'm sitting in the front room waiting for her to go out on a date. Her father was ironing in his shorts, his underwear. He's ironing on an ironing board. And in my household, my mother did everything. She ironed my handkerchiefs. She ironed socks.
Oh, my goodness.
It was unbelievable. And I'm watching this, and then I'm seeing her mother in the kitchen on the phone with Marky grabbing her skirts, crying, "Ma!" And she's talking to somebody on the phone. And Virginia's yelling, "Where's my slip? Barbara, where did you put my slip?" And Barbara's yelling back, "I don't have your slip." And I'm going, this is the most chaotic place I've ever been into. But once I became part of the family, it was amazing how much love and compassion this family. Look, who was it that said that he, without fault, throw the first stone?
It's the guy you didn't get off the.
Yeah, I didn't get him off the.
That guy you didn't get him off the rap.
But I can tell you that this family, the love and the compassion this family has for themselves and others is by far one of the greatest things I've ever experienced and lucky to be a part of.
Yep. Well, we're lucky to have you. I'd vote you in the Family Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
All right, you're welcome.
Thanks, Wayne.
All righty.
Thanks for watching and listening. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is produced by me, Marley Rice, and Christine Jinbo, and edited by bad boy Bobby McCall. Original music courtesy of Lennon Music Production, and original images courtesy of Sienna Lennon Photography. A big thank you to all of our contributors of the show. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories, Inc. and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you watch and listen. Make sure you press that subscribe button, give us a review, leave a comment. It will really help us grow the show. And you know what else will help us grow the show? Head on over to patreon.com/Denny Lennon to get some never-before-seen videos, pictures, interviews, and so much more. We are all over social media and constantly sending out clips on Facebook, conducting fun polls on Twitter, going live on Instagram, and more. To find all of our social media links, head on over to sportsstoriespodcast.com. SSDL proudly supports the My Stuff Bags Foundation and the Heroes Movement. Links to how you can support and help these foundations can be found on our website. We also want to give a big thank you to all of our partners of the show. So, as Coach Lennon would say, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me, Marley, at info@sportsstoriespodcast.com. We want to thank all of our followers and listeners, and we will see you next time.
Check it out, Buck!